He was gone. He was gone. An entire year talking about his downfall, the allegations, the misconduct. It should have been enough to finish anyone. Stephanie was in charge. Things were good. Things were going great. And he can't just come back. Can he? He can't just come back. Can he? Papa H, can you hear me? Papa H, can you? I've lost all hope. What is there for a man with no hope? Oh well. I guess we'll just talk about the Royal Rumble 2023. The most rumbliest time of the year for WWE came just as a boardroom battle royale was brewing, as Vince McMahon muscled his way back into the company, sending multiple board members over the top rope. Cody Rhodes returned to action after having wrecked his pec last year, entering the men's rumble at number 30 and going on to win the entire thing, leaving the path to a WWE championship unblocked for this grandson of a plumber. Let's go! The answer to the question, what if Mr. Monopoly was made of 10-day-old ham, Uncle Howdy made his presence felt at the end of the neon-soaked Lights Out match, taking out LA Knight with the suggestion of falling on him before exploding. Wrestling. Mountain Dew better. Mummy just killed a man, put a dome against his head, then got hit by Beth Phoenix. But even a run-in with the Glamazon didn't stop Wonder Woman Rhea Ripley from winning the Women's Royal Rumble all the way from the number 1 spot. Water proved to be thicker than honorary blood as Sami Zayn turned on Roman Reigns, setting a chair at the head of the table in defense of Kevin Owens. Bros before slightly newer bros. So, with the Rumble in the rear view, it's time to look at what happened, what could have been, and what might be because of it, as we say, go home, Rumble, you're drunk. Show. I haven't worked out the catchphrase yet. Titles, go! So I think it's safe to say that most wrestling pundits would have called the 2022 edition of the Royal Rumble a bit of a stinker. I mean, I would say that the event went down like it was wearing concrete Air Jordans drowning in a river of Shane O'Mac's sweat. Then again, I'm an optimist. So it fell to the 2023 event to part those soggy, salty lips and give the entire pay-per-view concept the kiss of life. A not insignificant task considering it was the fans who had actually been left with a bad taste in their mouths. But sometimes, things can get so bad that the only way is up, right? Well, not when Vince McMahon is hell-bent on dragging you down, because the Rumble was poised to take place amid an absolute shitstorm of negative press. After a slew of sexual misconduct allegations against him were uncovered by the Wall Street Journal in 2022, Vince McMahon unrelatedly retired from his position in WWE. And there are air quotes the size of Omos around the word retired. But a mere 6 months later, Vince McMahon was back on the scene, using his position as majority shareholder to muscle his way back in under the pretense of preparing WWE for a sale. In a move that would leave Logan Roy with a semi, Vince swept himself back to power, designated himself and loyal stooges George Barrios and Michelle Wilson to the board of directors, while simultaneously ousting others from the upper echelons of the company. WWE talent were reportedly left in the dark, according to Fightful, about the move, and many said that they were worried that Vince would try to retake creative control from Triple H, which, let's be honest, wouldn't be the first time he'd inserted himself where he wasn't wanted. Allegedly. Despite the internal response being one of concern and the negative PR associated with Vince's return, including news of a multi-million-dollar settlement with former WWF referee Rita Chatterton, who had accused Vince of sexually assaulting her in 1986, WWE's stock price soared. Do you ever just get the feeling that we're living in the end times? I mean, this and the price of butter makes me think so. This cost me £100. Anyway, despite the Barney taking place behind the scenes, the Rumble itself this year managed to go off with an almost buttery smoothness. Well, it's all sticky. It's alright, it's just Luke's seat. It's fine. A lot of the success of this year's event comes down to the consistent booking. Despite their creator Stephanie McMahon also falling victim to Vince's return and resigning from her positions of co-CEO and chair, the Godless Women of WWE put on a good showing in their Royal Rumble match. Now, I'd argue that while overall it may not have been a revelation, there were moments of divine inspiration throughout the match, and certainly some moments of idol worship, as Triple H finally brought about Judgment Day for one of his NXT favourites, Rhea Ripley. Mammy Mother of God. After a brief run-in during the men's match to attack Edge and subsequently be attacked by Beth Phoenix, Rhea Ripley overcame a 2-second twinge in her ribs, entered in the #1 spot before grinding her way through 29 other women to earn herself a Choice Championship match at WrestleMania. What's that? WWE striking while the iron is hot? That's pretty good. I mean, they usually strike long after the iron has eroded. I mean, in this case, the iron was actually pretty hot back in 2021, so I guess they just sort of reheated it to the exact same point. Because Ripley would go on to cash in her Rumble win for a match with Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania for the SmackDown Women's Championship, a sort of flip reverse of Chaz winning the 2020 Rumble in order to challenge Rhea for the NXT Women's title. It's a feud which Charlotte ultimately came out on top of, and that's a bit of history that WWE should not reheat like it was room temperature rice. My dinner's gonna be really weird tonight. Shouldn't have blown my food budget on the butter. Delicious. But it turns out a single grain of rice can tip the scale though, and the decision to have Rhea win shifted the entire balance of WWE in the run-up to the Rumble. They reportedly hastily moved up a match between Ronda Rousey and Raquel Rodriguez that was originally set to take place on the pay-per-view to an episode of SmackDown, and then airlifted in Charlotte to make her the champion, because Charlotte. And with the pieces set, it was time for Triple H to king-make Rhea for a showdown with the Queen. And I know you're typing something probably about king-making being a drafts thing, but we only had chess sets in the office. I didn't want to play chess, so I reckon is it Nick? It's Nick, isn't it? Triple H's approach to the booking of both Rumbles this year was one light on surprises overall, especially when you consider some of the rumours swirling ahead of the show. Because according to Dave Meltzer, Stone Cold Steve Austin was asked to dig out one last can of whoop-ass from his larder and even take part in the men's event, but it turned out that was a load of old beans. Oh no, the lid's fallen in. Oh well. Oh, that's gone off. Melt said that Austin had been offered a return for the Rumble and even his pick of opponents at WrestleMania, including the likes of Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar. So Austin reportedly passed up on Roman Reigns and a ticket to Suplex City because when you've got a history of neck injuries, it sounds about as appealing as a one-way ticket to Slough. Now for US viewers, Slough is a really rubbish place. But to put it in terms you'd understand, I guess we could say, it would be like me saying it's about as appealing as a one-way trip to America. While surprises were thin on the ground for the Rumble matches, the show itself certainly did have a few eyebrow-raising moments. None more so than Bray Wyatt's return to in-ring competition during the Pitch Black match, which saw Wyatt, a man trying to repent for his sins and set his life on a new path as a force for good, succumb to the hauntings and tormentings of demons from his past to become a monster once more. And then a platter of deli meat in a top hat showed up. Ooh, spooky. The match undercut its own set-up serious undertones by daubing both men in neon glow paint like it was after hours at Burning Man because Mountain Dew, and then burning a man as Uncle Howdy coffin dropped through a stage before it erupted in inexplicable pyro. And I just think it's crazy that WWE would choose to sabotage their own suspension of disbelief for a silly sponsorship spot, especially for a character who's on like the knife edge of parody like Wyatt. Yeah, Mountain Dew reportedly paid $1 million for their name on the match, but you never saw The Undertaker take time out of making coffins to tell you how much he loved bloody Bonio or something, even though top breeders do recommend it. I just think it's disgusting. I think it's absolutely disgusting to sell out so brazenly at the expense of your own content. And I believe that. I believe that as strongly as I believe that every dog deserves a nourishing, nutritionally complete dog food. And that is why I always recommend Bonio. Not only was the sponsorship of the match a swing and a miss, but Wyatt's Bonio-faced bud Uncle Howdy also missed his mark when attempting to dive onto LA Knight in the climactic moments of the segment. It was one of those spots that makes you go, why would they choose to do that? Because a good portion of the audience in attendance could see just how wide of the mark Uncle Howdy landed, not to mention that it barely looked convincing to us viewers at home. I mean, Did they think just that, the pyro was meant to distract us? Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think you can just sort of jangle your keys in front and I'll forget? What's it saying? Whee! Considering the turbulent history of Wyatt's presentation in the company, this sets a bad precedent for him, especially as WWE executive Craig Stimmel suggested to The Hollywood Reporter that WrestleMania might have a match sponsored by Cinnamon Toast Crunch. I mean, at least Toast Crunch is a good way to describe Uncle Howdy's weird face, though. One person who may as well have not left the farm for the Rumble this year was Brock Lesnar, who only lasted 3 minutes in the men's event before being tipped like a cow by Bobby Lashley. Old McDonald did some harm though after his unceremonious elimination, tearing apart the ringside area, throwing some of the announce desk into the ring, and chucking one of the referees over the barricade. Barricade? Said that like I'm in Les Miserables. Barricade! Now, the tantrum was always planned to go down, but Brock was said to have taken matters into his own hands when deciding to throw official Eddie Orengo over the guardrail. And there was reportedly concern about him suffering a foot injury during the spot. It was suggested by Fightful that Lesnar had heat backstage for his actions, but also that heat is a relative term relative to how cross you want to be in front of Brock Lesnar. So, I mean, unlikely to change much because the decider between Brock and Bobby seems set for WrestleMania. Nobody wants to be angry in front of Brock Lesnar. While Brock may have not got the showing he was after in the Rumble, the women's event saw some surprises and brought about a chance for a character refresh for a few superstars. Notably for Asuka, who came out to the ring as a full-on murder clown, and for Piper Niven, who came out as a person with a human name. We also saw the exceptionally brief reappearance of Chelsea Green, who now holds the record for the shortest women's Rumble run, and Zelina Vega, who came out dressed as Juri from Street Fighter in yet another sponsored spot. Zelina Vega, Zelina Balrog in Japan of course, was also announced to be a color commentator in the upcoming Street Fighter 6 for its real-time commentary feature, which is designed to call out dramatic moments, big plays, and explain mechanics, and is likely a lot less repetitive than Michael Cole. But perhaps the biggest shock entrant in the women's match was Nia Jax filling the My Hole-shaped hole in our hearts after her release in November 2021 after reportedly refusing to be vaccinated against COVID-19 per WWE's policy. And I mean, we can't confirm that she did in fact get herself vaccinated before her WWE return, but something was clearly interfering with WWE's broadcast signals because her music was played before the Rumble countdown time and making the whole segment just absolutely confused. And you know what? I'm just saying. Jax's WWE return caused a bit of a stir considering she'd spent a fair amount of time since her release bad-mouthing her former employer, which led many to wonder whether or not she would be back full-time. And there was plenty of confusion around this as WWE released a new Irresistible Force branded t-shirt alongside her appearance in the match, though she also remained in the alumni section on the WWE website, and outlets like PW Insider reported the spot was a one-off and Nia would not be back with the company full-time, making her a totally resistible force. And at the time of writing and recording, she hasn't been seen again though. But I imagine if she's going to turn up, she'll do it on SmackDown, the day after I recorded this. Brilliant. Speaking of conspicuous absences, there were a few names that seemed a shoo-in for the Rumble who just didn't show up. Because ahead of the show, lots of rumours pointed to IWGP Women's Champion Kairi returning to WWE for a Rumble appearance, which many speculated was because of a secret relationship between WWE and NJPW that centred on Carl Anderson returning to WWE and still being the never openweight champion. But then he went and lost that title, didn't he? He did. Don't need you. This also meant that Mercedes Moné, the former Sasha Banks, who made her NJPW debut at Wrestle Kingdom 17 to face off against Kairi, was unlikely to appear despite the will she won't she return rumours that have been floating around for literally ages. And what about Naomi? Perhaps even more insane was the complete and utter lack of The Rock, who many thought would be an obvious shoo-in for WrestleMania Goes to Hollywood. I mean, it makes perfect sense. The Weinstein of WWE's already returned in time, so why not one of the highest paid movie stars in the world? Allegedly. Triple H said post-show that a Rock WrestleMania match just didn't seem in the cards, but the door was always open to him returning to WWE. And if it helps, we'll move the door closer. We'll move the door closer. Please. Dwayne, please. Actually making his return to WWE after tearing his MCL a little over 2 months before the show was Logan Paul. Now, Paul got a healthy pop for his entrance, but perhaps the bigger pop came for his can of Pop Prime energy drink, which he drank and then threw into the crowd, instantly making one member of the audience a millionaire. F***ing YouTube. Bet it tastes like shit. Paul's miraculous recovery from injury was not the only talking point he brought to the show, as he and Ricochet had the Rumble-stealing spot when they springboard collided in midair. I'm not entirely sure what the plan was from either man there, but I do love watching things smash together. Unsurprisingly though, post-show reports said that Paul may have been injured during the match. Yeah. No Sherlock. Roman Reigns backstage was said to have said that one day Paul will learn to tuck his chin in when taking bumps, and Logan mentioned on his podcast how he had definitely hit his head a few times during the match. Well, I guess that's one way to learn. In a Rumble lacking surprises, perhaps the biggest non-surprise was Cody Rhodes arriving in the number 30 spot after being pre-announced for the men's match and then going on to win the whole thing. Cody's roads to WrestleMania, a genuine pun that WWE has made and I respect them for, began in earnest as he overcame Gunther in the final two to get his big moment, pointing at the sign. Pyro. It was an obvious choice for the company really, but one they did well to flag up beforehand, as they don't want to run the risk of Cody coming out to booze for the crime of not being Sami Zayn. Quick mate, set yourself on fire again. They're booing you. Meltzer reported that WWE were very aware of Sami Zayn's popularity, but decided to stick to their guns with Cody picking up the Rumble win, something they were rewarded for with enthusiastic responses from the audience in attendance and great viewing figures for the post-pay-per-view Raw. Meltzer said after the show that WWE did not count on Sami Zayn getting so hot, and they don't see him as the guy to main event WrestleMania. I mean, it's not like there's a whole room full of people telling them any different, is there? That'd be crazy. Now, while the Rumble pay-per-view may be the destruction derby of wrestling events, the show itself was actually main evented by HBO-level drama, as Sami Zayn finally turned on the Bloodline in order to rescue his bestest buddy in the whole world, Kevin Owens, and I use the word rescue in the loosest possible terms. Now, the match between Reigns and Owens was good, but it was the segment afterwards, the stories, that showed how incredible the Bloodline, Owens, and specifically Zayn are at drama. They had the crowd eating out of the palm of their hands. That's disgusting. The way this story culminated made the segment one of the all-time great Rumble moments. The look of shock on Roman's face as yet another friend lays him out with a chair. Sami Zayn's confliction at siding with his old friend or his new pals. Jey Uso's feelings of betrayal as Sami turned his back on them after he had finally welcomed him into the Bloodline. Because Jey is slow to trust, but once he does, it's all or nothing. He's like a swan. He mates for life. Zayn would be announced for a shot at the head of the table at Elimination Chamber in Montreal. It's always good to lose in front of the hometown crowd. Just ask Brett. Now, I called the Rumble competent during the podcast review because while it featured easily one of the greatest main event segments in modern wrestling history, the rest was just, like, well executed, fun wrestling. And I mean, that's a massive compliment considering the shitstorm that last year's show was. And despite all of the drama going into the show, it actually went off without a hitch, with Fightful Select saying that one talent told them the process was the easiest in a long time, and that Vince McMahon being completely hands-off meant that there were way less last-minute changes. So now all WWE have to do is they've got to navigate Elimination Chamber with Reigns versus Zayn. They've got to pay that off in a way that satisfies everyone and doesn't turn the entire crowd against Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania. I don't envy you, lads. I don't. And I've just eaten butter.